It's D-U-E-U till I see you by this point. You're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Man, we about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it, you're with it. Let's do it. We gon' make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Yeah.
Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook here, giving you an idea of what's on tap for this episode. We're going to talk best prop bets for week 14. We're going to get into our fantasy football playoff lineups with Chris James, and we have a guest picker this episode giving you his game predictions. And we're now joined by the coach, Gene Clemons, who does a great job with football game plan, but also does a great job on his YouTube channel at youtube.com/Coach Gene Clemons. Also follow him on Twitter at Gene Clemons, and he's chosen 3 games to talk about based off the matchups and what he's seeing within those 3 games. And Gene, I love that you broke it down this way. And let's start with one down in Florida with the Bucs and the Vikings. That's a very interesting matchup. What you see in that one?
Well, it's really an intriguing matchup because both teams have a lot to play for. Neither one of those teams have shored up a playoff spot yet. They both are most likely looking at wild card positions because the team in front of them has amassed such a lead that it's going to be hard to run them down. And what I really look at is, number one, can the Vikings defense stop all of these weapons when they're really, on display for Tampa Bay? And what is Tampa Bay going to do with Jefferson? I have no clue how they're going to be able to stop him because nobody's been able to stop him all season. I've never seen such a polished and poised rookie wide receiver. This isn't like Randy Moss. Randy Moss is a freak of nature, but Randy Moss was just blowing the top off of everybody, and you couldn't stay deep enough to allow him to get by you. But when you look at this matchup with Jefferson, he does everything. And the one thing we know that the Buccaneers cornerbacks struggle with, they struggle with double moves. And nobody's more fluid in and out of breaks than Jefferson. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they match up with him. Do they overcompensate for him? And now we see Dalvin Cook be able to really start to gash him for big games because the Bucs have done a good job against the run all year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because you look at on a perimeter, this is the guy that can play inside or outside. So I'm pretty sure they're going to try to move him across the formation. And it just ties into the second game when you talk about perimeter play. You look at Kansas City taking on Miami. Now, this is a show me game for the Dolphins. And if they can step up to the table and slow down this passing attack of Kansas City, it goes a long way in helping prove that they are legit and they are a playoff caliber team that can go far.
Well, here's what it is. Everybody's saying that Xavier Howard deserves some potential defensive MVP consideration. We're gonna find out. Because let's not let the score of Kansas City's game fool us into thinking that Kansas City was struggling. They just didn't score touchdowns. You can't rely on Kansas City to not score touchdowns every week. There was a touchdown that went to Tyreek Hill that he actually caught that wasn't called a touchdown. They had another touchdown that should have been an easy touchdown that Tyreek Hill got turned around on. And at some point, you can start seeing Sammy Watkins get back into shape. And so when you start to add all those weapons back in, will the Dolphins be able to get any pressure on Mahomes? I say no. If they're not able to get pressure on Mahomes, it's going to be a very long day for the Dolphins defense. And what's that offense going to look like versus a very opportunistic Kansas City Chiefs defense?
Yeah, they're going to have to keep Chris Jones out of the face of Tua Tagovailoa. Otherwise, like you said, it could be a long day. And the final game we have here is going to have a ton of intrigue for a lot of reasons. And that's the Philadelphia Eagles and New Orleans Saints. And talk about quarterback play in this one. We're liable to see many different combinations of quarterbacks in this ball game.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Carson Wentz gets to keep his job that he has not earned this year. or if they're going to give Jalen Hurts the opportunity to be that spark plug. They still have something to play for. I don't like this idea of people saying, well, why would you make the playoffs only to get beat in the first round? No real legitimate coach and or player thinks that way. So if you have an opportunity to get into the playoffs and you can catch a spark, if Jalen Hurts is that spark, you got to take it. It's clear that the receivers respond differently to Hurts than they've been responding to Wentz, for whatever reason that is. And Hurts just has that confidence about himself that we'll see. I heard someone say, and I think it was Jeff Saturday, who alluded that the Eagles should use Jalen Hurts the same way that the New Orleans Saints uses Taysom Hill and I'm like, but Jalen Hurts is a quarterback. Taysom Hill's a gadget guy that they're trying to fit into quarterback. He's not a quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a quarterback. He's been a quarterback. He's had ample amounts of success as a quarterback. He should be allowed to either succeed or die in the craft that he so chose to perform in. And I think he's earned that right. So this idea of him being the next Taysom Hill was always flawed, because he's not Taysom Hill. Number one, Taysom Hill is probably more athletic than Jalen Hurts is. But he's nowhere near the same level of quarterback that Jalen Hurts is. So the idea that you would use those two dudes the same way is bonkers to me.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at Jalen Hurts and what he did at Oklahoma and also Alabama, improving himself in the passing game quickly. Who would you compare his game to coming out of college?
I would compare it a lot to Donovan McNabb, which is kind of interesting that he's with the Eagles. Remember, McNabb came from an option style of offense. He came from a running style of offense. And while Hurts didn't necessarily come from a running style of offense, the way in which they used him a lot was as a quarterback who was a threat in the running game. And so being able to then, the genius of McNabb wasn't that they used him as a runner. The genius of McNabb is that they let him be a quarterback in Philadelphia, and then his ability to run was able to extend the play or make a play where there was no play. I think that's the way that you should do things with Jalen Hurts, rather than what they're doing with Taysom Hill and to a large extent a lot with Lamar Jackson, asking them to be primary runners for their teams. I don't think that's the best mode of success for your quarterback when he's an athlete. So it'll be interesting to see if that's what they do in Philadelphia.
You heard it from the coach, Coach Gene Clemons. We appreciate you taking time, and we'll be back with more Football Game Plans NFL All 32 show after this commercial break. But be sure to follow him on Twitter at Gene Clemons and subscribe to his YouTube channel at youtube.com/Coach Gene Clemons. Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW in his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app.
Well, the game of football has taught me so many things, man. Now, think about the huddle we have right now, right? I tell people this all the time. There's a reason why they call it a huddle. You know, people have been huddling all their lives, trying to find ways to enhance each other's lives. The great teams do that all the time. The great teams do that. The better the huddle, the better the team. And so it's simple, man, how if you huddle for all the right reasons, we wouldn't have Ferguson. We wouldn't have some of the challenges that we have in our society. But as we all know, there's always a moment when somebody doesn't belong in the huddle. And yet we have to continue to move on. We got to continue to play. So the game of life, man, is always starting with a huddle. And for me, I'm lucky enough to know that, you know, by the graces of God, man, it's been a nice huddle. It's been a nice huddle. And if I just keep making sure that he's in front of me, I'm going to be all right.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, Investment, Retirement, Security. Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, here with some of my best prop bets on the Week 14 schedule, starting with Jacksonville and Tennessee. I think we'll see the Jaguars be the first team to have a turnover. It's safe to say that the Titans tend to do a great job with being opportunistic on defense, and at minus 140, it figures to be easy money. The Cardinals' offense, to me at least, is chunk play dependent, and because of that, you'll see a lot of 3-and-outs early on. So I think we may see more punts from the Cardinals than the Giants in this ball game. So I'm taking this bet at plus 145. I'm also excited to see Jalen Hurts start for the Philadelphia Eagles against the New Orleans Saints. I believe the Eagles' skill players are equally as amped to see that as well. Look for that momentum to carry over into game day, as I'm taking the Eagles to get the first score of the game, which will be a touchdown, at plus 290. And at plus 420, I like the Seahawks to get back on the winning track against the New York Jets this week. It'll be surprisingly close, as I'm taking the Seahawks to win the game between 1 to 6 points. And welcome back. Now it's time for the ever so popular Chris James starting, sitting, and sleeper lineup. Chris, let's get this thing rolling with your starting lineup for Week 14, which is now the fantasy football playoffs.
Absolutely. And so this guy, if you have him on your roster, you missed out with him for multiple weeks. But the last 2 weeks have been really good and then not so good. Expect great this week, and that's Austin Eckler. Listen, an Atlanta defense that does struggle against the pass, but especially with running backs coming out of the backfield who catch passes, and no matter what Justin Herbert shows up this week, if they need to feed the ball via the carry to Austin Eckler, he'll do it. I expect multiple touchdowns from him this week.
Should be a great game, man. I really do like that matchup between Atlanta and the Chargers. And, you know, when we look at your sitting lineup, it's always interesting because you'll have one, maybe two studs on this sitting lineup. And we know sitting means temper your expectations for the production over where they're projected to go for this upcoming weekend.
Absolutely. And this guy, you know, near and dear to my heart, you know, we're Louisiana guys. He went to college in Louisiana, and he's done really well this year, and that's Justin Jefferson. I expect for Adam Thielen to play in the slot if he does play, which should be playing. And you know what's going to happen? Carlton Davis, who outside of Tyreek Hill having his day, has done a great job this year. So he'll probably blanket Justin Jefferson for the game. They'll go in another direction. They have a lot of pieces, and Justin Jefferson, unfortunately, will be the lack of beneficiary of the particular situation on this day coming up.
You know, I'm always excited to take a look at your sleeper lineup because there's guys that we like to say maybe are, professional players, but they end up on your sleeper list. Take it, for instance, last week you had Mr. Trubisky, a professional quarterback that played really well statistically up until that last fumble that cost his team the game. So who's the biggest sleeper you have this week?
You know, and I mentioned a guy earlier, and I like Quentin Cephas. Again, it's not going to be a person who you'll definitely play in some of these lineups, but if you play best ball, if you're in a deeper league, he's a guy that could be there for you if you need a fill-in. And if you're in a standard league, here's a guy who's starting to tick up in targets, Cole Kmet. Just think about it. Drafted him in the second round for a reason. That's why they have him. And I think that he, especially in the tight end wasteland, could be a good start for you this week and could win you a playoff game.
Gonna be fun, man, taking a look at some of those playoff matchups, and you're gonna need this week to help you get some victories. So we'll step aside and come back with more Football Game Plans, NFL All 32. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense.
I love football. I cannot get enough of football. I watch it on every level.
The emotional release You know, whether it's an exciting play that gets you all jacked up and juiced, or whether it's the fact that you're able to pour everything you have. Whatever frustration you had that week, you can put into that first kickoff coverage, that first block that you have, whatever it might be.
And I couldn't think of anything better to do to fill that void that you have as a football player than to get into coaching.
You get a chance to release a lot of emotion that you otherwise have no place to release. There's nothing else like that.
Again, the relationships you build and the people you're around and watching the guys compete, not just on the football field, but in life after they get done playing. It's just an amazing game.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan's NFL All 32 show. Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. And now I'm joined with my guest picker. I want to add a new segment to the show, Brandon Howard, who does a great job in covering the NFL, covers the Miami Dolphins. He writes for The Athletic. Brandon, I appreciate you taking time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, you ready to have some picks, man? So I know what we're going to do. We're going to go into a little bit more in depth on a couple of games, and then we'll show you the rest of your picks at the end. But I want to get your quick thoughts on tonight's game between the Patriots and Rams.
Right. Yeah, I really think that that's going to be kind of a tale of who can stay on the field, in the run game, and keep their offense on schedule. And I really think that bodes well for the New England Patriots. You see Damian Harris coming along, and they're really kind of unlocking his potential and his talent. And I look for him to have a big game, in that matchup. So I like the Patriots in this one.
Kansas City is traveling to Miami, and you cover the Dolphins. You have a good beat on those guys. And I want to get your take on Tua, number one, but also what are your overall thoughts on this game? Because this is a show-me type game for Miami.
Absolutely. It's a measuring stick game for the Miami Dolphins, and they get to kind of see how also that defense stacks up against one of the top offenses in the NFL, or if not the top offense in the NFL. So, they've been playing well on that side of the ball. And I look for them actually to match up pretty well, against, Kansas City and Pat Mahomes and company on that one. But when it comes to Tua, you and I have spoken about this, at length in the past. And it's something that, we never really got the chance to see Tua improve upon while he was at Alabama, and that's his ability to see things when the picture changes post-snap. He did have some difficulty with that during his time at Alabama, and we never got to see improvement in that area. So has his time in Miami allowed him to improve there? Remains to be seen. I take nothing away from Tua. I think he's going to be an incredible talent here in Miami. But, in this particular game, when you're playing against a guy like Tyrann Mathieu, who, what you see is not always what you get, post-snap, that's going to be a little bit tough for a young rookie quarterback. So that's why I kind of look for the Kansas City Chiefs to come away with that one. And Tyrann Mathieu might come away with a big play in this game as well.
It's interesting. I'm glad we have you on because this next game we're going to talk about is going to be a fun one to watch. You have the New Orleans Saints traveling to Philadelphia to take on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. What are your thoughts on Hurts being a guy, and what are your thoughts about this game as a whole?
Absolutely. So, when the decision was made that they were going to go with Hurts, I initially, before that decision was made, I had, I had the Saints come away with that win, but I really think that this is going to be, kind of the rallying cry for this team. And with Jalen Hurts entering the lineup, I think he's going to be the shot of energy that this team has needed for quite some time, throughout the season. Just any sort of change sometimes is good change, kind of shake things up. And I think that, if you get him in the mix, running kind of the zone read stuff and, also, just what he can do, when plays break down. I really like his ability. I think we kind of saw that this past matchup. So, and we saw a little bit of a glimpse of that. So I really think that he's kind of the shot in the arm that this team needs. I look for them to come away with it to win.
It's going to be fun, man, because I think with him, his ability out there, it should help open up the rest of the offense. I want to get your thoughts on this game because this is another pivotal one in the AFC North. You have Baltimore taking on the Browns. The Browns are surging. There are 9 wins right now. Their first winning season since 2007, and they face a very tough Ravens team that has had their number the last couple of years, especially in that division. So what are your thoughts on this ball game, and how do you see it shaking out?
Definitely. I think you have to go with the trends. You have a team that's ascending and they're playing well right now. And you have one team that just hasn't quite found an identity all year long, and it's tough to just rely on one guy to constantly make a play when something breaks down, So I think that, right now, the Cleveland Browns are playing better football. They get to rely on Chubb, and then, Baker Mayfield, get him involved in that play action. No one is stopping their run game. And I don't see anything changing as far as this week is concerned, because I think that as far as, stopping the run, this Baltimore Ravens team is just not the same as we've seen in previous years, So I think that the Cleveland Browns are going to go ahead and come away with this win.
It's going to be interesting, man, because if the Ravens lose that game to the Browns and the Browns going with all that momentum, it's going to be a very tough team to watch or face in the playoffs. Now, great on the picks here. Let's look at the rest of your picks that we have here on the schedule. And while we look at your picks, I want to ask you, go back to Miami and Kansas City. If you're looking ahead to the NFL draft and you're looking at potential players that can help this Dolphins football team, who would you take in the first round? I think the Dolphins have 2 first-round picks or something like that. So who would you look for or look toward to address some of the issues that you see with this Dolphins squad on both sides of the ball?
Absolutely. Well, as far as offense is concerned, I'm looking at Jalen Waddle or a Jamar Chase, one of those two guys, at the receiver position, because what you're looking for is guys that can uncover quickly, guys that can get open quickly. And on the flanks right now, you don't really have that, on the Dolphins roster. You got a Devontae Parker, guy who's more of a 50-50 ball type guy, and also Gesicki. Those are your two leading guys on the flanks. So I think that you definitely do want to come away with a receiver either in the first round or the second round at least. Also, you look at the run game. They definitely could use some improvement there at the running back position. And so that's going to lead me to look at guys like a Travis Etienne. I know there's some concerns with fumbles and things of that nature, but the way he's improved as a pass catcher out of the backfield is remarkable. He's just done nothing but get better year over year. So that's a guy that I would look at as well. Also, you've got to take a look at, the running back out of Bama as well.
It's going to be fun, man, because if they can add more explosiveness to the offense with what they want to do with Tua, it's going to be great things down there in South Beach. Brandon, you've been great on this show, and you're doing great down there in South Beach as well. Where can people follow you on Twitter to keep the conversation going?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at bhoward_81.
That's awesome stuff, man. Thank you again for taking time.
All right, no problem.
We want to thank Brandon Howard, Chris James, and also Gene Clemons for joining us here. I'm Emory Hunter-Czar, the Playbook. We'll catch you next week on NFL All 32.
It's D-U-E-U till I see you by this point. You're reading my mind. It's time for football. We about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it. You're with it. Let's do it. We gonna make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Man, we about to keep this thing moving. I'm about it. You're with it. Let's do it. We gonna make this thing official. You heard me? If you're the best, then let's prove it. The goal is set to have a team become a unit. Yeah.